Tony Brunton, and I am one of the account representatives at Lumos Learning, and I will be the moderator for our presentation today. It is my pleasure to introduce our presenter and Director of Curriculum, Marissa Adams. Marissa has worked in education for the past 15 years. She taught 8th grade and was a campus-level administrator at the elementary, junior high, and high school levels. She has served as a curriculum writer and assessor. In addition to her campus-level work, Marissa is a member of U.S. Congressman Michael McCall's Educational Advisory Board and is a member of Texas Council of Women's School Executives, American Supervision and Curriculum Development, Pi Kappa Pi, and Delta Kappa Gamma. Before I pass this on to Marissa, I want to mention a couple housekeeping tasks. During the presentation, all lines will be muted. This will allow others the best opportunity to hear the presentation. However, we want active participation today. At any point in the presentation, you can type a question into the chat or use the raise hand feature. At the end of the presentation, we will have some time for questions and answers. Marissa and I will answer as many questions as possible during this time. Secondly, this presentation will be videotaped, archived, and used with other clients at later dates. This includes all of your answers, questions, and comments. If there are not any other questions at this time, then we will begin. Please go ahead, Marissa.
So again, we've got a lot of great topics that we're going to be covering today. On the screen, you should be able to see an infographic which gives you an overview of the PARCC assessment system. PARCC recognizes that the best way to measure student academic success is to assess them multiple times a year. To that end, they have created a system that relies on multiple assessments, two of which are required. The performance-based assessment is the first test students take once 75% of the year is complete. Then, once 90% of the year is complete, the end-of-year assessment, or EOY, is given. In the center of the infographic, you will see the different question types students will be assessed with. And we are going to go into much greater detail in both these math and English language arts question types later. At a high level, math includes type 1, type 2, and type 3 questions, and English language arts literacy includes evidence-based, technology-enhanced, and prose constructed. All questions are deeply aligned to the Common Core state standards. By this point in the year, most students have either taken the first PARCC assessment, which is the performance-based assessment, or called the PBA, or they will be taking it very soon. The next step in the PARCC process is the EOY, or the end-of-year exam. So what should you expect in the EOY? What is similar, and how is it different from the test that your children just took? At a high level, the EOY is a 2-session test focusing on English language arts literacy and math. Each session is broken into 2 units with a few exceptions. The Math 1 unit has 2 sections, one for calculator usage and one for non-calculator usage. Looking a little deeper, let's explore the similarities. Like the PBA, this next test will be in the content areas of math, English language arts, and it will be a technology-based assessment, meaning the students will take the test on the computer. In some instances, schools and districts have elected to take the test in a pencil and paper version for this school year. Typically, if your child took the PBA on the computer, then they will also take the EOY in the same way. Although the content tested is similar between the 2 tests, there are some significant differences in how exactly that content will be measured. So now let's look at specifically what the EOI will entail. In the English Language Arts end-of-year exam, students will be assessed on two different types of text, literature and informational. The literature and informational text are chosen based on the appropriateness, and PARCC uses a variety of different ways to measure that appropriateness: word count, reading level, text complexity, and ensuring that students are exposed to a broad range of questions. Next, let's take a look at the different types of questions. The first type are the evidence-based selected response questions. These questions are the ones that your students are typically most familiar with because they are most similar to the radial dial multiple choice questions that students have seen in the past. The next type is the technology-enhanced constructed response. Within these questions, your children will need to manipulate the technology to ensure that they are answering the question. Sometimes they will do this by dragging and dropping text from one place on the screen to another. They may also need to highlight text within the passage or highlight text within the answer. And sometimes they might also have multiple select. The key with these questions is that students are beginning to prove their answers using evidence from the text. The third type is a prose constructed response. But you'll notice with this one that this is in green on the screen. And the reason this one is green is because a prose constructed response, which typically is the written response students give, will not be assessed on the EOI exam. We just wanted to make sure and mention to you this different type of question. The most important thing to remember with the PARCC questions is that while there are different types, they will all be more in-depth than what your students may be used to seeing. In this graphic, taken from the PARCC website, you will see a side-by-side comparison of the old way questions might be asked compared to PARCC's new way. This is a standard vocabulary question we might all be familiar with, where students simply had to know the meaning of the word to find the synonym. In the new question style, students will have to refer to the text, find the meaning of the word in Part A, and then prove their answer in Part B. Now let's look a little more in depth at the types of questions your students will see on the PARCC EOI and how they will look. The format of the PARCC English Language Arts exams are significantly different from what students might be used to. First, the stories are formatted for electronic usage. On the left side of the screen, students will see 1, 2, and sometimes even 3 passages. But they will not see the passages in their entirety unless they scroll down. So students have to make sure that they scroll down using the scrolling tab on the passage. Once they have read their passage, they will be able to begin answering the questions associated with it. Thinking of the types of questions we just reviewed, let's look at Part A. This is considered an evidence-based question, or an EVSR. Students must read the word as it is used in the context of paragraph 1, pulling the evidence to answer that question. Once they make their selection, they can then scroll down to Part B, which requires even more evidence. Reading the question, students will see the need to return to the story to prove their answer. With evidence-based questions, PARCC is ensuring students can not only answer the question being asked, but can find the evidence to defend their selection. This becomes very helpful when answering critical thinking questions or questions where more than one answer might initially make sense to the student. The next question we'll look at is a technology-enhanced question. Again, the reading passage is on the left, and you will notice that this passage is the same from the previous set of questions. Similar to other testing formats, students will answer more than one question about each reading passage. In this case, students can tell this is not a standard multiple-choice evidence-based question from instructions before the question. They are told to drag the words into the charts. This question has multiple steps. Drag one word, then another, and then drag and drop the evidence for those words. It's essential that students do read and pay attention to all parts of both the questions and the directions so they can ensure that they are completing the question in its entirety. You can see that as the students manipulate the answer choices and drag them into the boxes below, the boxes turn yellow, and the answers turn yellow, removing them from the list and placing them in the box. If the students realize they made a mistake, they simply click on the black X to remove it. The answer they selected will return to the list and then turn blue again, leaving the box white so they can then drag in another choice. Another type of evidence response-based selected question has students relying on evidence to prove their answer in Part A. However, this time, students will be selecting two sentences from the options below. And in this case, students will notice a difference in how that happens. In Part A, a more traditional style multiple choice question, they see a radial dial they are familiar with. This is the circular type of answer that students have seen in the past. When they move to Part B, they will notice boxes instead of circles. When they make their selection, a small check mark appears. A good trick students can remember is that any time they see these small boxes instead of circles, they know immediately they will have more than one answer. In a final sample of a technology-enhanced question, you can see that again, students will have their reading passage on the left side of the screen. In this case, they are reading an informational passage that includes a map as a visual aid. Once they are finished reading, they are asked to drag and drop events into the chart below to show cause, effect, and response. As students select a choice from above, with how much time students will have to take the test. This time might be slightly different than what you have seen published in the past. Based on feedback from pilot testing and testing groups in the fall of 2014, PARCC found students took considerably less time than anticipated to complete the test. Additionally, based on an evaluation of the assessment, PARCC reduced the proposed number of English language arts text passages and questions that students in lower grades would face. So now let's move and take a look at math.